You ever get fined just for trying to enjoy a peaceful afternoon? Yeah, well, I did. Picture this. I'm sitting by a serene little lake that's practically in my backyard. Rod in hand, cool breeze brushing past. Not a care in the world, until the HOA president, clipboard and scowl in tow, storms up like I'd just dumped toxic waste in the water. Excuse me, she barks. Fishing here is strictly prohibited under HOA Regulation 7.3 subsection C. She points to a laminated sheet like it's the holy grail of neighborhood law. I blinked. I've been fishing here for years. Nobody's ever had a problem with it. Well, now we do, she snapped. You'll be receiving a formal citation. Expect a $500 fine in your mailbox by tomorrow. A $500 fine. For fishing. I didn't even catch anything that day. I laughed, thinking it was a joke. But the fine showed up, certified mail and all. I tried to appeal, spoke to the HOA board, even went to a meeting. They doubled down, told me next time I fish, they'll report me for trespassing. Even though I live there. So I did what any reasonable man would do. I bought the damn lake, and then I banned the entire neighborhood from using it. Not a single kayak, not a paddleboard, not even a duck feeder allowed. Petty? Maybe. Satisfying? Oh, beyond words. But before you start thinking I'm some rich jerk with a grudge, let me rewind a bit. Because this little saga didn't start with revenge. It started with a love of nature, a clueless HOA, and a decision that would turn the whole community upside down. Let me take you back to the beginning. Before the drama, my life was peaceful. I lived in a small lakeside neighborhood just outside the city. A cozy home, a beautiful backyard that gently sloped down to the water, and birds chirping at dawn like clockwork. It was the kind of place people dream of retiring to. You could smell pine trees in the air, and in summer, kids ran barefoot along the docks. I wasn't rich. I worked remotely as a freelance graphic designer. Nothing flashy, just enough to pay the bills, stack some savings, and enjoy the little things, like fishing in the early mornings before Zoom calls. The lake wasn't massive, more like a wide, lazy pond. But to me, it was heaven. A slice of stillness in a loud world. The HOA? They'd always been annoying, but manageable. A few passive-aggressive emails about grass length, a warning once. About putting out my garbage can too early. Typical suburban nonsense. I never thought too much of it. Most neighbors felt the same. There was grumbling, but we all played along. I'd fish maybe twice a week. Quietly. No music, no mess. I'd even pick up trash other people left behind. I respected the lake because it meant something to me. It reminded me of my grandfather who taught me how to cast a line and sit still long enough to appreciate the ripples. The HOA never said anything until they did. And when they came swinging. I didn't even know fishing was against the rules. That's how sneaky their playbook was. Somewhere in a 78-page PDF was a clause added in a recent amendment. No notices, no votes. Just slipped in during a board meeting barely anyone attended. But the thing about poking a peaceful person is, sometimes you wake up a storm. And that storm was brewing in me. It started with a knock on the door. Karen. Yes, her actual name was Karen. How poetic. She was the HOA president and self-appointed sheriff of our lakeside utopia. She stood there holding a clipboard like it was a weapon, lips pursed tight enough to crack glass. I saw you fishing this morning, she said with the confidence of someone catching a bank robber. Yeah, I replied. And you're in violation of HOA rules. It's a $500 fine. I laughed. Are you serious? She didn't blink. Very. I asked where in the rules it said fishing was banned. She pulled out a printout and pointed to a highlighted line in tiny font. Recreational activities including, but not limited to fishing, boating, and swimming are prohibited unless authorized by the HOA board. Authorized? I live here. I didn't need permission to enjoy a lake that bordered my property. I asked why the rule was even there. She muttered something about liability and insurance risks. Apparently, someone fell off a kayak 2 years ago and scraped their knee. So instead of improving safety, they just banned everything. I told her I wasn't paying. That's when the threats came. She warned me of escalating fines. Suggested they'd involve law enforcement if I kept violating rules. Told me I could be taken to small claims court or worse, face a lien on my house. All for casting a fishing rod. I asked if other people knew about this. She said, they'll know soon. Sure enough, the next HOA newsletter featured a bold headline. Residents caught violating lake regulations. Penalties enforced immediately. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was a warning shot to everyone. That night, I sat on my porch and looked out over the water. The moonlight danced across the surface the way it always had. But it didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt like it was being stolen. They were trying to take the one thing that made this place special. And I wasn't going to let them. The following week was hell. Every time I went outside, I felt like I was being watched. Karen started walking her dog conveniently around the time I liked to sit near the lake. HOA board members, people I barely recognized, began introducing themselves with fake politeness and hidden agendas that I got 3 more notices in my mailbox. One for unauthorized fishing, one for unauthorized gathering, because a friend joined me one afternoon, and one for hostile behavior. After I questioned the HOA rulebook at a meeting that I attended that meeting hoping to resolve things civilly. Instead, I walked into a snake pit. Karen stood at the head of a folding table with 5 other board members sitting like royalty at court. I brought a copy of the original HOA charter from when I bought the house, which had no mention of lake use restrictions. That I spoke my case calmly. I'm a homeowner, a rule follower, and a nature lover. I wasn't being reckless. I was being respectful. The lake borders my property. It was part of why I bought the house. Karen interrupted halfway through. The rules evolve to meet the community's safety needs. I fired back. You mean the rules evolve when no one's looking, and you slip them in quietly? She didn't like that. The room got tense. Another board member, Dan, a retired lawyer, chimed in. The board has the authority to pass emergency safety regulations. Fishing isn't an emergency, I snapped. It's a hobby. That's when Karen said it. If you continue to disrespect our authority, we may need to escalate this legally. I laughed. You're threatening legal action because I'm catching base? No, she said with a smug smile. Because you're refusing to follow the rules. I left the meeting furious, but more determined than ever. These people weren't trying to protect the community. They were on a power trip. That night, I stayed up researching everything I could about HOA power, land rights, and, most importantly, ownership of the lake. And what I discovered changed everything. Continued in next message. Continuing the full script. I didn't sleep much that night. I was too deep into county records and property maps, fueled by caffeine and rage. I needed to know who actually owned the lake. Here's the thing. My backyard touches the lake, but does that mean I own it? Was it part of public land? Or did the HOA somehow have rights to it? After several hours, I found it. The lake wasn't owned by the HOA. In fact, it wasn't officially owned by anyone, not in a traditional sense. It was what the county classified as undeveloped communal water, left unclaimed during the development of the neighborhood. HOA maintained access to it, but didn't own the body of water itself. But here's where it gets interesting. The surrounding land, including the southern edge where my property sat, was for sale. It was listed in a government auction for unused parcels, overlooked for years. That I sat back in my chair, stunned. Could I really buy it? Next morning, I called the county clerk's office. Long story short, after weeks of paperwork, verification, and a not-so-small check from my savings and freelance income, I had done it. That I bought the land surrounding the lake. Legally, I now had majority ownership and direct control of lake access. From the only usable side, the HOA's access point, it was just a narrow walking path at the far end with no dock, no shoreline clearance, and no parking. Completely useless. With the help of a lawyer, I filed paperwork officially limiting access across my property and any easements tied to it. I posted private property, no trespassing signs, and even installed a simple gate near my backyard trail. The final move? I sent a formal cease and desist letter to the HOA. Karen called me immediately. I didn't pick up. She emailed, accused me of manipulating a loophole and violating community harmony. That one made me laugh, because now it was my lake. They wanted to play power games? I just flipped the board. That you'd think buying a lake would be a big ordeal. But honestly, it was almost too easy. Turns out, the lake itself had no development, permits, or private claims. It sat in a weird legal gray area. Nobody wanted the responsibility. It wasn't part of any public park system, and developers had skipped over it years ago because they thought it wasn't worth anything. But to me, It was worth everything that I worked with a real estate lawyer who specialized in land acquisition. After a few phone calls, she confirmed it. The parcel and access path connected to my backyard could be purchased through the county's quiet title process. I'd have to pay taxes, assume liability, and take over maintenance, but that was fine by me. I filed the paperwork. A month later, it was mine, not just figuratively. I had the deed framed on my wall. The best part? The HOA had absolutely no idea that I didn't announce it. I let them keep sending their little warning notes. I let Karen puff her chest at board meetings. And then, one beautiful spring morning, I walked down to the water with a fresh sign that read, "Private lake, no public access. Violators will be prosecuted." Neighbors stared. Word spread. I got a dozen emails from confused residents. Some were angry, others curious. Karen, of course, was furious. But legally? She was powerless. They tried to fight it, of course. Hired a lawyer. Even held an emergency meeting to challenge. The purchase, too late. The land was mine. The access was mine. And without a path to the lake, their rules meant nothing. From HOA fines to full ownership. I'd flipped the script, and now it was time for a little payback. Karen lost it. First, she tried intimidation. Letters from the HOA lawyer claiming illegal seizure of communal property. My lawyer shut that down in 2 sentences. The lake was never theirs to begin with. Next came the drama. A special HOA meeting was held, packed with angry residents demanding answers. Some sided with Karen, others were just confused. How could one man buy our lake? They asked the truth. They never owned it. They just assumed they did. Some people were actually supportive. Honestly, it's kinda cool, one neighbor told me. You beat them at their own game. But Karen? She went full meltdown mode. Started circulating petitions, made flyers accusing me of environmental abuse and weaponizing land. Someone even spray-painted "Lake Thief" on my mailbox. Nice try. And I filed a police report and had cameras installed. They realized quickly that legally, they couldn't touch me. The more they pushed, the deeper the hole they dug. The final nail? I revoked all unofficial easement rights to my property. No more shortcut paths. No walking trails. No backdoor access. I posted signs and hired a local guy to put up a little decorative fence. Not ugly, just enough to make a point. This wasn't just revenge. It was a lesson that don't pick a fight you can't finish. After months of tension, things went quiet. Karen eventually stepped down as HOA president. Word was she'd burned too many bridges. Even the board turned on her. Residents started adjusting to life without lake access. Some were angry, sure, but others kind of respected it. I became the unofficial legend of the neighborhood. The guy who bought the lake. I didn't ban everyone out of spite. I made a rule. If you treated the lake with respect, you were welcome, with my permission. I let kids fish again. I let an elderly couple kayak once a week. I even hosted a barbecue for a few cool neighbors. But the HOA? The board? Banned for life. I put up a plaque that reads, "Private waters. Respect nature. Respect people. No Karens. Allowed." It's still there. Sometimes I sit by the lake with a beer in hand and smile. They tried to find me for fishing. Now I own the place they were trying to control. Call it petty. Call it brilliant. I just call it peace. This story isn't just about revenge. It's about standing up to bullies. Power doesn't always wear a uniform or carry a badge. Sometimes it hides behind bylaws and committees. But when you know your rights and play the long game, you win. Oh, and the best twist? Turns out Karen's house backs up to the lake too. She can see it. She just can't touch it. Not without my permission. And you can guess how often that happens. Spoiler: never.